13 Questions by Man Transcending. Manhood in the Digital Age.
Intro for the first episode that I am not answering the questions on. Exciting.
Actually, what episode are we on? We're up to getting close to 40 here, I think, in the bank. You might the next one might even be 40.
Yeah, I think Eric's episode will be episode 40. That's awesome. 40 episodes in, and then I kind of get to jump in and take over, not for booking guests and whatnot, which is, I couldn't ask for a better platform to kind of just be handed. I don't want to say handed to me, but Darren gave me the opportunity to run with it. So it's exciting to see what happens. And yeah, it just blows my mind because I really do feel like, I know I said this before, but standing on the shoulders of giants, like without Darren and coming up with this brainchild of a project and looking for help for from other people to help run it, that's something I'm pretty grateful for. I guess we talked a lot about being grateful in the last episode, and I kind of had the idea of maybe we could start a gratitude segment, maybe get a jingle at some point, and I don't know, Adam and I can kind of just share something that we feel grateful for based off of, our conversation with the guest, and kind of continue that in the shows moving forward. And of course, encouraging the listeners to do the same, not just, when they listen to this podcast, but I think every day, it helps to wake up and think of at least 3 things that you're grateful for. And, practicing gratitude on that level kind of changes the pace of your day, changes your outlook, your viewpoint. And I think it can be a helpful thing. At least it was for me.
No, I agree. I mean, that's certainly something that I didn't expect when we interviewed Eric here for the show. Eric is a firefighter. You know Eric personally. How did you come across bringing Eric on as a guest?
Well, we have a D&D campaign together, but that's not where I met him. I met him when I joined my local Freemasonic Lodge. He was the steward, which is a position in the officer line that is in charge of preparing the candidates before they go through each of the 3 degrees. So when I was going through them, he's the guy that would, get me ready before the degree work, and then lead me to the door. And so just someone that's with you, so you're never alone through that process. So that's how we met, and then we got talking, figured out that we both liked D&D. I had never played before. He wanted to pick back up the campaign, so we've been doing that for about 2 years now.
Oh, so you are very new to D&D.
Yeah.
That is weird. Dude, synchronicity. Yeah. I'm only like 3.5 years into D&D in my adult life, and I'm just finishing up a 3-year campaign.
Wow, yeah, that is a little synchro. But yeah, I enjoy it. We try to play at least once a month, but it's sometimes hard to do because our group is so spread out through, the northern, this area of the country or whatever. I think our DM lives 2 hours away, and then sometimes I'm driving from 2 hours away.
It's also a commitment.
Yeah, we haven't broken down and done the whole play on Zoom or Skype thing yet, but that might be coming when the weather gets a little bit more inclement.
Well, I was saying before when you spoke about gratitude, this episode especially, I didn't know where it was going to go. I, did not know anything about Eric aside from that, very brief, little bit that you had told me before, and we jumped into it. And when it comes to just his view on the world, health, so many topics and things that I'm interested in, it was so surprising and refreshing to see that there was somebody out there who was just as knowledgeable in some areas, and in areas way more knowledgeable. And not only that, taking it into practice, being in the field, directly dealing with people. I mean, it was, to be grateful for things. I am very grateful that Eric is who he is, that he absorbs information the way he does, and he's able to being a firefighter puts you in situations where there are people who are in need right then and there. And when you can provide that in knowledge, which can guide you further in life just based on, how you're presenting it, it's just really cool to see that guy in that position with his state of mind.
Yeah, it definitely makes me feel a little bit safer knowing that there's those guys out there, you know, that are first responders, that you can rely on, and they're genuinely good people.
So yeah, I think everybody is going to enjoy the episode that we have ahead for you. I liked it. It was a really, really fun one to record. One of the more fun ones I've recorded. And yeah, it's, you go into these interviews going, are we going to be able to plush out enough information? And we always end up doing it. But this was it was like, I almost felt like I'd have to put a wall up to dam this in, because we could have taken the podcast on and run it for just hours and hours, and it would have just been a running conversation. So, yeah, it was very natural and very free. It was very fun. And even more fun, we've got the Discord chats all set up. And as soon as we set it up, start inviting people in, lots more people start joining, and boom, Erik's there. And so it's really cool. So we get to continue the interaction, the engagement, past the show. So it's weird. Get to, kind of make that first meeting, go to the bar, hang out with some friends. But, then when I go back to the bar, Erik's still there.
Yeah, the Discord community, it's going to be so great. I'm super excited for this thing to take off. And the other thing that I'm super excited about with this project is it being open source. So anybody that has a role model that they look up to, that they want to ask these questions to, and they value their input, then we encourage them to go and record them yourselves. Or if you're not comfortable doing that, then have them get in contact with us, and we can do it for you.
And we'll help you get the recording standard to where you need to be. You can start off with just having a cell phone as long as the environment is set up. There's a lot that we can do in, guiding you to that, and, helping you on the back end, because obviously I can edit it, put it together, run it through processing software, and we can get you to where there's a good sounding podcast. Or if you want to make some investment and get in some minor equipment, we can help you in that way as well. But recording standards, your environment, figuring out how to set it up, where you're going to do it, and then some recording practices, all free. We want to, help you in any way that we can. And, it's selfish because I want to hear more of this. I want to hear those 13 questions that I haven't been able to hear yet, that you give me. It's an extra free episode for me. So I'll gladly edit it together and share it with everyone. Just want to make sure that it's something that is palatable to the ears.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's already one person in the chat talking about interviewing their father figures.
Oh,
in
yeah.
their
Paulie
lives.
has already done a listener show. You can go through and check it out. I forget which number it is, but yeah, that one is in there. And of course, he is threatening, and it's a good threat, because I think he's going to pull the trigger on it, sending us another one.
The more the merrier. And I think I haven't really talked to you about this, Adam, before, but I think when we do get listener submissions, maybe we bump them up to the front of the release list.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The only thing that changes in my release schedule is the time to edit it. So whatever's been previously edited. But yeah, absolutely. I'm certainly down for that. It goes out as soon as it's completed and ready to go, which generally with the episodes, maybe, a week or a couple of weeks, or if we've recorded 2 or 3 in a week, it's possible that there might be a 3 or month-long gap between a release for any of the guests. But yeah, definitely I'll put that as the cream of the crop and float it to the top.
Yeah, I think that would be a nice little incentive for the listeners to send submissions in if they can hear it sooner. It would be for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I certainly listen to them as soon as I can, so there's no problem in dropping it into the feed as soon as possible. And, who knows, if we have enough of them coming in, it might be to the point where we can just start dropping them in as bonus episodes in between the regular release episodes.
Yeah, that would work too. I mean, everything's flexible here, so we'll just kind of see where it grows organically.
Absolutely. So everybody should absolutely go to the Discord chats. If you're listening to the short version of the show, you can get the full version. You can get the extra questions. You can get where we talk about how the process was afterwards, what the person thought of it, which is always one of my favorite aspects of the show. And, that's it. So you just get a more complete, well-rounded show, more of it, and completely free. This is a value for value show. We are here to hopefully improve who you are as a human being, or give you knowledge that is going to help you expand yourself in some way for the better. And we're not asking for anything. We are value for value. If you find value in what you see here, we want to be able to bring more of this to you, which means, it means having to ask for your help because, right now holding down 2 full-time jobs doing all this, all expenses, coming out of pocket for the production, which is no complaint. It's not a complaint. But, if we weren't burdened down by those things, then we'd be able to produce more and give more. And so that's always where I've been at. Support me if you can. I'm here for you as much as I can. The more time I have for you, the more that you get.
Yeah, for sure. I think when I was brought on board, we all agreed that we're not in it to make a ton of money. We're going to be here doing the project whether you support us or not. So, kind of rambling here.
No, I'm believe it or not, I'm in that exact same rambling boat as you. I'm here. The things I dream of spending money on are being able to, improve the quality, improve the time that we spend on doing the show. The things like that, being able to improve the time that we have, being able to reach out to guests. So there's I don't know. It's the weird dreams. I don't dream of the Ferrari. I dream of the decked out iMac Pro running Studio One 5 full edition on it. So I have a different kind of wet dream.
Yeah, definitely upgrade in equipment would be nice. I'm actually using a microphone that was sent to me from by a future guest we're going to have on. So more on that in future episodes. And the earphones I'm using, that's all I have. I have microphone, earphones, and my computer. So pretty basic setup.
Listen,
and,
speaking to everybody out there that wants to get into this, and let's say you want to start your own podcast, you want to start, doing things beyond this. Right now, I'm on a $23 microphone. I actually upgraded to this. I have a $90 Sennheiser microphone E835, and I like this way more. I like the way it sounds better. It tends not to catch the S's and the that I hate that comes out in my voice, and it sounds great. It's the same one that my co-host on Cat in the Box uses. And so I've really fallen in love with this, and I'm using an $80 mixer that my co-host sent me when he upgraded to his. So, I mean, really, when you get into podcasting, as long as you're running the right software, which you can get all for free, and for $100 in equipment, maybe $20 in cords, you can literally be, better than 99% of all the podcasts out there on the market and be a professional. So we're here to help you do that. We are a resource. I want to hear you make those professional sounding podcasts. And even if you have just like an iPhone, we can do some amazing things with that as well. I mean, just go and listen to Joe Rogan. He does some where he does not do amazing things to it. He's on an airplane and it still turns into a usable podcast. So, we can certainly make it work.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about technology nowadays. I mean, it's getting cheaper for the most part, so it's not horribly expensive to produce good quality audio.
Exactly. There's just a few simple tips, right? You want to have an isolated sound environment, so you want to be able to hang curtains, throw rugs on the ground if you got hardwood floors, put pillows in the room. You just want something that dampens any amount of sound. If you have sound coming in from outside, hang blankets. Put them on the walls. I do foam on my walls, just packing foam. I've used some binder clips that I clip onto the ends, and then I just hang them into nails on the edge of that I've nailed into the wall. Makes a perfect sound isolation for reverberations. And then going forward from there, you want a pair of closed headphones or earbuds. and then you want to have a decent microphone or have the microphone positioned in the optimal space. I'll give you a perfect example. The Blue Yeti, I'm not a fan of it. I don't think it's a very good microphone in general. Having said that, our buddy Grimsteak, he uses a Blue Yeti and he sounds amazing. Amazing. But that's because it has a very small sound profile window. You basically have to eat the microphone, keep yourself at about a fist level, and always be speaking in the same direction. But if you can manage that, then it's an amazing microphone. So it's less forgiving than other microphones like the one that I'm using. Has a little bit different profile. It's not XLR, it's USB. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is that there is certainly a nuance to doing it, that once you learn, you're a step above everyone else.
Yeah, guys, Adam has been super helpful with guiding me through the steps for getting, starting up podcasting. He's been a resource for me. I'm learning how to do all the editing, which is an extra step that you're not going to have to worry about. But we're a resource for you guys. Reach out to us if you have questions. Throw them in the chat room. I don't want to say blow up Adam's DMs, but
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, I'm there to chat. Over the weekends, if I'm super busy, like this weekend, I didn't bounce in the chats there for probably a good 36 hours between editing and doing, personal things in my own life. But, when I see those, direct at me's, as long as my app is open, I'm going to be bouncing in there. I'll definitely be in there within every few days chatting. I mean, B-Strut, I know you're on the Discord like all the time, but, you're I'd say lucky enough to have one of those jobs where you can be in front of a computer and have that extra, socializing going on during your regular workday.
yeah, it's definitely a professional lurker in the chats. It's just something I have up on the side, and of course, I get notifications on my phone when somebody new comes into our server. So yeah, it's definitely something
Beautiful.
that I've found value in, and has allowed me to be more connected and closer to the community. And I think
Exactly.
that's a great thing.
That's wonderful. No, and I love it because, I work a 9 to 5, no cell phone in the building type job. So, I go to work, phone goes into the car, I come home, cook dinner, after dinner sometime, 8:30, something like that, sitting down, then it's, wind down. So if I happen to be lazy and do no self growth and pop in a movie or something, I might not see the chats till in the morning or the next day. So yeah, but I should say that I've also done a social cleansing, if you will. So Discord has been my slow step back in. Speaking of the D&D, doing D&D, that is our main communication. So that's what got me back in. But I got rid of Facebook, got rid of Twitter. They're just placeholders. I keep one for my personal podcast to post when I'm doing new episodes, but I don't read the comments. I don't go there. I've considered it to be just better for my mental hygiene. But the Discord's different. The Discord is, it's a rolling chat. It's not messed with any, there's no algos obfuscating the conversation. And, for that, it's a wonderful resource, especially, doing a show like this. I mean, I get to talk to you, I get to talk to Eric, and then I get to show up in the chats and still have that same kinship. So, yeah, I'm excited to be back in there and amongst everyone.
Yeah, I don't spend too much time on other social media sites. I have them like as placeholders, like you. But yeah, Discord is something different. It's like the chat rooms, like the old AOL chat rooms back when the internet first started coming around. So there's not censorship. There's no censorship going on there, and it's just normal people that are talking. Sometimes you do get a bot or two, but they usually like delete their profile after a while, or after a few seconds. At least they have in my experience. But yeah, it's
Well, and strangely
definitely.
enough, it's a small and growing community. I like to say it's a small world, right? You could travel across the world and then run into a neighbor and you never know like why you're in the same spot. And 13 Questions is kind of the same way. We're a small podcasting group, but there's all these, ancillary people coming in. And it's wonderful because all the people that have been dropping in, I'm like, oh, well, I know that guy. I know this and that guy literally who's coming up to be a guest, hopefully here in the near future. But there's all these people, and I'm like, oh well, it's kind of cool. Like I already know them from this other aspect. So, yeah, it's not a community of trolls. It's a community of people who want to grow, and everybody's welcome as long as you're not a dick. If you're a dick or an asshole, then we got no room for you. But if you can abide by those two simple rules, then we're a very loving community.
Yeah, it's a great place. Everybody should check it out. Speaking of community, I think that we already mentioned Grimsteak once in this intro, but I thought that maybe we could talk about his other podcast a little bit, since the topic of anime came up so much in our conversations with Eric, that I thought that it would be appropriate to give a shout out to the Shonen Dump podcast. That is Grimsteak's other project he's got going on, where they discuss everything and anything anime. So,
And
if
I
you are
dare
a
say
fan-
he is an expert to a heavy, mild degree. Yeah, I love Grimsteak, and we were trying to get that guy to come on this show. Which, to his credit, one of the reasons I want him on here so bad is the fact that it's so hard to get him on a show like this. So, definitely listen to his show. He's got some great insights on the world. You might not like them all, but they're certainly going to make you think in some wild new ways.
Yeah, so check it out. I just wanted to toss that in there for edification of our listeners who might like anime.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's my number one favorite source for anime.
And then, yeah, so I don't know, Adam, if you wanted to kind of share something. I know this kind of split off from our expressing gratitude segment, but is there something that you wanted to express your gratitude for?
Um, just, to go on what I was saying before, which is, very grateful to be able to speak to people like Eric. It's one of those, no idea what was going to come of the conversation, no idea where it was going to go. And so many things came up that are personal to me, and people I know, or things that are affecting them, or affecting large portions of the population, and things that people aren't aware of. And it was just incredibly refreshing to know that, there's other people that see the world differently, that aren't caught up in the story of the day or the tale that's being told on the television, and is in a position to be able to see some of these things in the real world, affecting people, real physical things. So, yeah, it's wonderful to be able to speak to a guy, to be able to share his information with other people and share his insights. So, yeah, I guess I should say, in a roundabout way, having Eric on makes me grateful for him and for 13 Questions.
Yeah, right on. As I said before, I'm super grateful for this community that I've come from, to have the opportunity to be able to do this, and because I know Eric on a personal level, I'm going to say that I'm grateful for him too. He's a good guy. He's a good friend. He's been a positive influence in my life. So I love you, buddy. Thanks for being my friend.
All right, so check out the show notes, check out the links. You can head to the Discord. You'll hear all of the rest of Eric. If you're already hearing all the rest of Eric after this, thank you for joining us. Thank you for saying hi in the chats, and welcome to 13 Questions. Thank you for joining us.
Enjoy the episode.
All right, Eric. Well, welcome to 13 Questions. I'm a little excited to have you here. I'm still new to meeting Bill. Been friends for a while in the chats, but haven't been working together in person for a long time. But he speaks very highly of you. So,
I really appreciate it.
yeah, I'm loving this. So if his friend, if Bill is any reflection of you, anyways.
I really appreciate it. He actually caught me off guard when he sent me an email about it, and I read it and thought he was almost kind of joking around. So I had to text him and was like, "Oh, did you seriously want to actually, interview me for this podcast?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So
I seem to be getting that a lot from anybody I ask.
well, it's not every day you get asked to, do, podcasts because most podcast people are hearing very influential names or certain people in different spaces um, that are of some repute. And here I am, Erik Johnson from South Bend, Indiana, rookie firefighter. That's really it.
I mean, that's the beauty of this podcast, though, is that I don't think that there can be a bad interview, and just because someone's not famous doesn't mean that they have something worthwhile to say.
I look at it this way, man. Everything you are is what you've absorbed from the world around you. Advice that people have given you. This is stuff that goes back eons, generations to the beginning of who we are as human beings.
Yeah.
So, you have every single person has a piece of that. We all have different views and different chunks of information. And when it's coming that far back, I mean, yeah, you can be anybody and there's value in the world. So yeah, I that's why I love the show because, yeah, you're just a firefighter. Well, you're just a firefighter who manages to be here after millions of years of evolution. And, those genes, that's you right now. You are the pinnacle of a form of life. So yeah, I mean, yeah, we all might be that, but I think we're all great to talk to. And so.
Oh yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
All right,
So let's
Erik.
get in.
Yeah, I was going to say, first question.
Yeah.
What was the best advice ever given to you? And would you modify it at all today?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the best advice that I was given when I was younger was from my brother, and the exact wording I don't remember, but it was along the lines of you always want to keep your cool in public. You never want to seem like you're on the wrong side of things when things go wrong or when things get serious. When I got into sales, it was very easily put. You're always being interviewed. So that's probably one of the greatest pieces of advice that I could have now because it's very true. No matter who you come across, any day of the week, people are going to perceive you from outward appearance, from what you say or anything like that. So the idea of you're always being interviewed is, I mean, it's really almost kind of self-explanatory. It's always something to keep in the back of your head because you never know what may come of it. Honestly, I remember when I had come back home from San Diego in 2004, and I just happened to be talking to someone at my old high school, and a girl that I went to school with, her dad was there, and he overheard me say, "I'm kind of looking to get into some construction," and he owned a construction company. And turned around and was like, "Are you looking for work?" And sure enough, I had a job like a couple days later.
That's phenomenal.
There is, I would say, one other great piece of advice that is more relevant, though. I mean that one's pretty relevant. But my pastor told me, myself and my wife, right before we got married. During we were supposed to go through marriage counseling before getting married, kind of like a thing to break down the ideas of marriage. But he said it's one of the greatest things that I think more people need to hear. It is, your marriage is yours. Do not try to fit someone else's mold. He was like, if she wants to work full time and you stay at home with the kids, vice versa, or any of that stuff, you don't necessarily have to fit into certain traditional ideologies of marriage. You do what works for you guys, and you do it as long as you're both in agreement. That's what you want to do, and don't really let anybody else dictate that it's wrong or right if it works for you guys. So that's that's a piece of advice that we always keep in mind.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's not often I hear people pulling like valuable, like useful tools from those pre-marriage counselings. Maybe I don't talk to enough people, but that's really awesome.
What's funny is actually we only did 2 sessions.
It doesn't matter. Sometimes that's all you need to change your life. I mean,
yeah, our pastor felt that after meeting my wife and myself, who he's known for years, and after sitting down with us a couple of times, he was like, "You know what? You guys are going to figure it out." He's like, I have all the faith in the world in you. You guys are going to be just fine. And we've been married 6 years now, 2 kids. We're still going strong.
Nice. Nice. What was the most important thing that you learned from your parents?
Ooh. Perseverance, and probably never stop learning. It's definitely an interesting dynamic. So my I come from a interracial couple. My mom's black, my dad's white. My mom actually originally was from New York, moved here when she was young, and they got married in the '70s. And while the '70s isn't quite, the '50s or or anything else like that, there was still some backlash from family and people associated with the family. They actually had to get married, I believe, in Michigan. They weren't actually allowed to be able to get married in Indiana at the time. Um, and family struggles are always, we had our own family struggles. Even then, like when my mom and dad got married, my mom already had a 2-year old. Um, and they kind of came in a generation where they didn't talk about certain things in the past. And I remember my family, I remember there being arguments, I remember there being fights. And, through it all, when it was all said and done, my parents are still married. Um, I love my parents dearly and they love us dearly. My brother, apologized for being a jerk as a son to my dad years ago. I mean, there was um, this moment where we all just kind of reconciled with each other. I mean, he even apologized for me for being a terrible brother, um, and I feel like if that were more of a modern, more of a modern family, that may not be the case with some of the stuff that my family struggled with in their own house and in their own unit. So perseverance is definitely a big one for sure. And then the never stop learning. My dad, he worked in a factory all of his life. He and I actually worked in the same factory for 4 years, and he taught me. He actually taught me the machine that he was running,
Wow.
and he actually did not want me to work in the factory when I got out of high school. He wanted me to find my own path, wanted me to learn other things, and he was adamant about it. And it wasn't until I was well into my 20s, um, that I had finally said, "Hey, it's kind of going to be an easy in. Can I get in on the factory and make some decent money?" Because in between that, I'd worked construction, I'd done sales, I'd been in retail. Um, I had done several things by that point, and nothing was really sticking with me. So I figured the factory would probably be the best route to go because I was going to get paid decent. Um, and I mean, even my mom, when I tried to go to the military, I remember her telling me, "Don't come back." And it wasn't a "don't come back" as in you're not welcome here. It was more of a try and go experience as much as you can and learn as much as you can away from where we live, because our where we live is just in a way so small. It's so narrow. So there's such a much larger world out there to go and learn. Um, Unfortunately, I got sent home anyway. I tried to go to the military and got sent home. Uh, and but those are probably the 2 biggest things I learned from them. My mom taught herself sign language while she was in her 40s, and she's been doing it ever since with the school corporation here. And it's something she just decided to pick up. There's no formal training at all whatsoever, and it's impressive to say the least. It's very impressive.
Well, I mean, especially right now, so many people right now with what's going on with COVID are just like alone in the world. They can't read lips. And if nobody can communicate with you, I mean, that one person that can understand you, I mean, that's a connection that, I mean, everybody's stuck at their houses going, oh my God, I'm going insane. I need my social media. I need my Nintendo. But man, there's some people that are like isolated in a way that you don't understand. That's beautiful, man.
Mhm. Yeah, man. I was actually going to start getting with my mom on picking up sign language again, because that's actually how I studied spelling when I was in elementary school,
Nice.
was doing sign language.
Nice.
Um, but I was going to start picking it up again because I can use it as a tool being on an ambo if I'm ever assigned to the ambulance, that I can use that as a tool to be able to help people medically, to be able to interpret for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Plus, if somebody's in that, if they have that need, just you having that connection, that's, the patient caregiver is so important sometimes in those stressful, scary situations. You can take something from being a really bad emergency and all your vitals can just come down with you. That's cool, man. What book has been most influential on your life and why?
I don't know if you're familiar with an author named Christopher Pike.
I've
He
heard of
wrote a
him.
series called The Last Vampire. Dude, that book changed my life. I read it in sixth grade. It was suggested to me by my sixth grade teacher because we were supposed to be doing some reading assignments. And man, that opened me up to a world of fiction and fantasy that I did not know existed. And I haven't stopped since. I don't know if Bill told you, I actually published a book myself some years ago.
Nope. No, all new to me. I love it.
It's fantasy genre. Bill and I played D&D together, and the first part of our campaign was something I actually wrote. And so, man, like I said, man, it just introduced me to something that I found so much passion in, that and it gave me a love for writing. That was probably the most influential book of my life, hands down.
I love it. Is it part of a series?
Yeah, there's actually 6 books. The first 3 are great. The 6th one is a little weird. Not sure if it was actually written by him or a ghostwriter, but it was a little strange. Still good, but strange. But yeah, it's 6 books. He wrote a bunch of other stuff too, and I actually followed his writing for a while. The Last Act was a really clever book written. But it just threw me into so many other things. I was on a vampire kick after that for a long time, and then into werewolves, and then eventually got into, then I got into anime, which then, got into the whole Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy stuff. It was just one thing after another. I'm trying to think. I read, what did I read? Forgotten Realms. So I read, what is it? The Legend of Drizzt, Dark Elf trilogy. I think I read that in high school, and again, just expanded my world even more. Because at that point, I was up until high school, there was still more of an obsession with the vampires and werewolves more than anything else. And then I read, something by Forgotten Realms, and it's like, man, this is so cool. Like, this is awesome. Yeah, man. Never turned back after that.
That's great. And you grew up at the perfect time for riding that vampire, like werewolf wave. That was huge because you were coming right off like probably the wave of Buffy and all that.
Yeah. And, I actually didn't really watch Buffy too much. So my things that I was into, so I read that and I was really into it. Let's see, that had been right around 98. Because I'm trying to think, I think it's high school till 2000. So we're coming right into, Blade. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was on. Kind of right around where a lot of that was kicking off. But then I was also still into Hercules and Xena, Willow, The Neverending Story, Dark Crystal. There were so many things that played a role. And like I said, The Last Vampire was just really the first book, though, that really captured me. And I had even gotten into reading some of the Interview with the Vampire, and reading some of Anne Rice's material. And man, it was just it was just great. It's just absolutely great.
What daily habits or rituals do you have?
I eat a lot of red meat, pretty much almost every day. If I'm at work, I got equipment checks that I have to make sure all my equipment's working properly. Need to be able to breathe air in a fire. Outside of probably just those 2 things, I do implement intermittent fasting pretty much every day.
Nice. So do you do like an eating window?
Yeah, I so typically so on my days off, I'm typically 16-8. But I have been getting back into doing OMAD, just because I find that eating one large meal, typically more in the morning, and I can be set for the rest of the day. But the caloric intake of that one meal is probably around 2,500 calories in a single sitting. So I could do 1.5 pounds of meat. So you take a pound of ground beef, make some burgers, add some bacon, add some cheese, some sauerkraut, and maybe a few other things, and call it good. And I might be good the rest of the day.
Nice. So pretty whole foods.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We buy a cow every year, so we get that. That pretty much takes care of majority of our meat, and we actually grow a lot of our own vegetables for the most part.
Beautiful.
My wife knows how to can, so we've utilized that quite a bit. That's how she grew up, and it's been huge for us. It really has been.
Oh yeah, it takes you out of the system and allows you to sustain yourself and save money. I mean, it's
So the save money aspect of it, the trade off is the work that it takes,
mhm.
and then the other trade off is depending on the quality. So when it comes to beef, if you don't care kind of where your cow came from or how it's fed, you could actually save quite a bit. We typically do 100% grass fed and finished. We get it from a local farmer that's probably about 5 hours from us, and we've been doing that for about 5 years. And it comes out, well, right now with COVID going on, it's actually come out better than most any other time. But we're still pretty in the, I think you pay for 100% grass-fed ground beef. Most places, I think you're paying between $5 and $6 a pound,
Mhm.
roughly. So we do come in under that. But if you're just looking at your standard 80-20 or 70-30, don't know
Right,
where it
right.
came from, ground beef, then yeah, we're a little bit more expensive than that. But again, it's just the style that we eat in, and
That's
it
amazing.
really
Is
works
it
out.
and does that come pre-cleaned for you, or do you have to take it to a butcher after you get the cow?
So we order it from the farmer. The farmer uses their own processor that they have down where they live,
Nice.
and when we go to pick it up, it's all packaged and
Nice. So show
processed
up with a
for us.
cooler.
Yep, pretty much.
Sweet.
Yeah, the other thing I think it's beneficial about eating that way is that it takes um, I look at it as like deducting from your future medical expenses. Like the
Yeah.
quality of food that you put in your body definitely has an impact on your future self. So paying that little extra for the grass fed or locally sourced or organic or whatever, I think if when you look at it in the mind frame of you know investing in yourself, I think it pays off.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're spot on with that. I mean, Bill, you know that 2 years ago I was 280 pounds. My asthma was awful. I'd have a hard time breathing just after eating. I got super tired after eating. And I knew after a trip to Amsterdam that I was becoming your typical fat American. So I had turned around and decided to look into some different ways of eating. Did carnivore for a little bit, and then did some keto with some intermittent fasting. Ultimately, returning to more of a carnivore, animal based approach, and my asthma has reduced 80%. I dropped 50 pounds over the course of a short period, and have kept it off for 2 years. I mean, overall, my overall inflammation's down. My health has thrived since eating this way for sure.
That's awesome. Have you noticed any other things like cognitive improvements?
That was actually the first thing that I noticed. So when I did the first 10 days on carnivore, I was actually doing a little bit leaner of carnivore than the normal approach. But 10 days of just not eating junk, or really any carbohydrates, my mind was on fire. I was more focused than ever before. I felt like I had just this wellspring of energy. Um, and again, the biggest factor for me was my asthma. Like I just noticed the reduction of symptoms. But yeah, I mean, my memory improved. Even now that my body's been able to adjust to a lot of that. Um, Before I was on the schedule that I am, my energy levels were just very stable. It wasn't like I had this overwhelming sensation of energy. It was just there was like this constant pool I could pull from without being absolutely fatigued.
What was the hardest part about making that transition, going from, I'm assuming, a standard American diet to, I mean, it's a huge change in your biology and your palate.
So for me, I was at my rock bottom, and I think that was the biggest at the time. That was the biggest motivator. Um, I could absolutely recognize that my health was garbage, and that was my main motivator. And I just wanted to stick to it. And the weight loss, it was really weird because the weight loss was nice, and I only actually expected to drop maybe 30 pounds, and I ended up dropping 50. But my mindset changed so much that I don't even worry about the scale anymore. It's more about body composition, but also a lot more about how I feel. And I know when I feel like trash after I've eaten a bunch of things I'm not supposed to. Um, and it took a lot of discipline. And honestly, I think fasting helped because, I mean, if you've ever done any sort of fasting, um, if you try to do a 3-day fast, or 5-day fast, you really start to be able to figure out what hunger really is. But you also start to realize that your body can handle going 3 days without food or longer in some cases if you got the energy stores for it. And you're able to exercise a little bit more discipline. And I know some people who practice fasting just purely for the discipline aspect, which is great because it's definitely a mind thing, a good exercise. But I just look at all the health benefits. That if you look at some of the health benefits from fasting for 36 hours or 48 hours or 72 hours, they're huge. I mean, they're massive.
It's actually turns on a whole different system inside of your body where your body starts going up and cleaning up, defective cells and different things. And it's like, well, this was a normal part of human beings when there would be periods of no food and you'd get like sleeping, you'd have your what do you call it? Just your digestive and your whole, that part of your system gets a break. And so it can go maintain everything else, go change the oil in your car, if you will, when you're parked and the engine's cooled. And we forget that we've gotten used to having it all the time and all of our food's addictive. So we're not going to stop.
It's one of those things. It's funny because the way that I eat is very much very animal based, very heavy red meat based. But I don't eat carbs very often. Sometimes lately I've been doing a little bit more once a week, but I've been trying to keep it a little bit cleaner. But even experimenting with eating a bunch of stuff I shouldn't, it's pretty interesting as I work on the department that the number one killer for firefighters is a heart attack. And it's actually pretty ironic funny how many looks I get when I'm using beef fat to fry my chicken.
Yeah.
I'm cutting up bacon. I got pork rinds sitting over there. Or I'm making burgers and I throw some cheese and bacon on them. And, I get some guys who are like, you're going to have a heart attack in 5 years. And I said, you think that, but, I'll only eat once a day and my insulin will stay or my blood sugar will stay at 79 all day. Whereas some of the other guys who you can clearly tell are insulin resistant and don't have the best health practices, they're jacking their insulin levels up all day, back and forth, and using coffee as a means for energy. And it's like, dude, if I really needed to, I could go 3 days without eating and be fine. And I'm not going to fall out or pass out on the floor.
Yeah. And it's sad because it's a lie that's been perpetrated upon us, for financial gains across the board. And when you really look at it, like we talked, there's two systems inside your body. Yeah. You have one that uses, glucose, but then you have another one that turns on and starts using ketones. That's a whole different system inside of your body. So yeah, you can burn one system out and become insulin intolerant and all these other problems, become diabetic, but some of those things can be reversed if you change your diet. It's like one thing that they do is the National Institute, it's the biggest national institute for children in epilepsy. The first thing they recommend is a ketogenic diet because in like 60% of children, that alone gets rid of all of their seizures. And when you start looking at just the base of that, you go, maybe our diet is having a huge cascading effect on like everything.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's, I mean, that's what I was going to say is what's funny about glucose is it needs a receptor in order to be used. So that's why you produce insulin. Like in order to use, it's funny, in my EMT book that I'm reading for my EMT advanced class, it even says in it, it's like, so if glucose stays in the bloodstream for too long, it damages organs. So that's why you need insulin to help get it into cells. And there is an issue in some cases when you have insulin resistance or just have some genetic issues where the glucose is too big to cross the blood-brain barrier. And so your brain is starving for fuel. And this is the thing with children leading to epilepsy and seizures and things like that. The ketones don't need that same receptor. They can just pass through the blood-brain barrier and be converted for the uses. And what's really interesting when I died, kind of immersed myself in a lot of that information and podcast after podcast, your body can create its own glucose. It can in the liver. It's called gluconeogenesis. It can create its own glucose by breaking down proteins. Matter of fact, the buildup of lactic acid in the body from either working out or anything else can be converted to glucose in the liver.
Wow.
Yeah, that actually can happen. The lactic acid builds up. It travels. It takes time, but it travels back into the liver, gets converted. Your body can create its own glucose. Your body cannot create its own protein. It cannot. It actually can't create its own fat. So those are two things that you need to ingest in order to have them. And that's just what's crazy. And there's actually really cool. So there's a couple things. One, Dr. Jason Fung wrote a book called The Ultimate Guide to Fasting and The Obesity Code. Two phenomenal books when it comes to health. There is a clinic in Budapest they used to be called Paleo Medicina. I don't know what their name is now, but they use what they call a Paleolithic ketogenic diet approach. And it is a 2-to-1 ratio of fat to protein, no carbohydrates. And they've been treating diabetes, seizures, cancer, the list goes on, and have been able to put a lot of things in remission from just not eating carbohydrates because the body can do it on its own. It's nuts. And again, when you were talking about like ancestrally speaking, that's when you really start thinking about it ancestrally. It's like that's how we were.
Well, look, we take an orca and we put it in a cage and its health declines. It can't live nearly as long. We've domesticated ourselves. We've pulled ourselves out of environments. You know, the Japanese are doing this. It's revolutionary to me, but it's pretty simple. If you're sick, if you're depressed, so many different health issues, go walk in the forest for a few minutes during the week. And then we find that there's these terpenes and things in the air. And guess what? They're at the 3 to 6 foot level or 8 foot level. So it's like right where we're breathing. There's this symbiosis there. And when you go in, you have positive immune system response to what? The smell of the plants? Well, yeah. And when we're removed from that and you're in artificial light, you're not getting your vitamin D, you're not getting the proper nutrients. We think this is normal when everybody's sick. And you go to some indigenous places and it's hard to find because there's very few uncontacted groups that haven't been, brought into the Western diet. But these groups, I mean, when they die, you're dying from injuries or animal attacks or accidents, not from fatty liver disease or from, bad teeth. It's these weird things that, their teeth are beautiful and amazing. Ours are terrible. And so, it's.
Well, I think that's how Weston A. Price got started. Was if I'm not mistaken, I believe Weston A. Price was a dentist initially, and that's what he was doing this. I think it was him, but he was going around looking at the teeth of these civilization or these indigenous people who had not been touched by Western civilization yet, and was finding that their teeth were great, that the development of their head, their brain, their mouth was all completely different than the development in the Western civilized world. They didn't have an issue with growing their molars or their wisdom teeth. They didn't have any issues with that. They didn't have to be taken out because their jaw properly formed because they weren't getting some of the stuff that we consider food, or our food-like products that we get so accustomed to. But you're absolutely right. It's absolutely crazy. And speaking of COVID, and what I found the most interesting is that the second leading cause for COVID was so the first leading cause was old age. The second leading cause was severe obesity and anything that was underlying with the severe obesity, and that's a health issue. Like a doctor can no longer say, hey, you know what, your blood work looks good, you're a little overweight, but you're healthy as a horse. That clearly, clearly can't be said anymore, because there's something out there that says, you know what, if you're unhealthy, it takes a toll on your system. I mean, it's very clear.
Yeah, and it's sad. We live in a system that doesn't pay attention to your immune system. When you go to the doctor and you have a health problem, you're not asked, what is your diet? Let's do a health journal. Let's find out what foods you're taking in. Let's do an elimination diet. Maybe you have an autoimmune disease that's because you're having a reaction to, could it be wheat? Could it be some sort of chemical or preservative or coloring or petroleum-based dye that you don't know about? I get migraines from eating certain types of food if they have MSG in them. Well, guess what? There's certain companies and manufacturers that hide under natural flavors MSG because they can. So to the uneducated person, which is most people, they could be eating a product they think is completely natural, having a terrible health consequence, and nobody's saying, what's going on? How much sun do you get? Let's check your vitamin D levels. Are you properly absorbing your vitamins? And to me, these are all like, especially in a pandemic where vitamin D seems to be one of the greatest protectors, or, least common denominators. High vitamin D levels are not a thing being found in sick patients commonly. Well, can't we focus on just that and stop locking people up? And that's the stuff that drives me insane. It's like, how about we just focus on health and immunity and making people healthier, instead of figuring out a way to give them a pill or a Band-Aid or an injection?
One of the problems, again, this is a topic I could talk about honestly all day. Just ask Bill. One of the one of the things that I had to start realizing, and there's I'm trying to think of who it is. Paul Saladino. He has his own podcast, but I believe he's very right in the sense of, we cannot continue to treat systems as individual when it comes to the body. Every system is intertwined with another one, and you can't treat just one system without treating another one. When it comes to things like depression, you will find a very high level of people who suffer from depression don't get enough sunlight, they don't get enough vitamin D, they don't produce enough serotonin to be able to sleep well, which just contributes to that. You probably notice a lot of them probably end up drinking a lot of caffeine, and which gives them adrenal fatigue. There's a lot of things that people just don't. We've been led to believe that those things are normal, and they're very much not. And because they're considered normal and have been for so long for a lot of people, it's very hard for them to let go of it. And I tell everybody, like, you got to have that Peter Pan moment in Hook, where when he was able to fly, he had to find that one thing that was going to give him that motivation to be able to fly. Everybody has to find it, and for everybody it's different. And I told my wife that, because she's a Disney buff, so she really liked that analogy. And I was like, but that's where I was when I fixed my health. Like, I felt like I was at rock bottom. My asthma was awful. And to be able to say, I didn't cure my asthma, but to be able to go, yeah, I reduced symptoms by 80% just by eating, or just by eliminating certain things that I eat, and my inflammation's down. My doctor, I have two doctors, and the one who's only known me for a couple of years, when I told him I was going to do the keto thing or the carnivore thing, he wanted to test my blood work every quarter. And as he predicted, my LDL cholesterol went up, but my HDL and my triglycerides were beautiful. And he was so frustrated he had to go see a cardiologist about it. And the cardiologist was like, how old is he? What is his inflammation markers? I told him my asthma improved, and he's like, don't even pay attention to the LDL. Look at the HDL triglyceride ratio. And he was like, if that's at a certain number, he's good. And you know what was even crazier is I went to my primary care physician who's known me since I was 12, went to him at the age of 30, 34. He asked me, how's my asthma? And I say, it's great. He stops everything, turns around and looks at me and goes, well, what did you do? And I told him, and he's like, if it's working, keep it up. He checks my paperwork to make sure there's no protein in my urine. Didn't even care about my blood work at all. Because he looks at me and he says,
he can see the
asthma
difference.
is inflammation. He's like, asthma is inflammation. And he was like, all a statin is inflammation, is an anti-inflammatory. He's like, you can give a statin to an arthritis patient and it will work because it is just an anti-inflammatory. So if your asthma has improved by you doing this, it means you're no longer inflamed. So there would be no point in putting you on a statin because it's not going to do anything because it might lower your LDL, but your inflammation's already down. So why even worry about it?
That's phenomenal. That's great to hear, man. And hey, just on the adding the icing on the cake, cholesterol is good for you. You need it. It's what you use to create hormones. And you find people that have heart attacks, they don't have cholesterol around their heart. So, these kind of weird little indicators out there, right?
There's a couple other things. So the one thing I want to get done is it's a CAC scan. It's a calcium artery something. But what it does is actually looks at the calcium, if there's any calcium buildup in the layers of your arteries. And that is actually what the quote unquote plaque is that builds up in the artery that causes a blockage. And I want to get one of those done. I think you can probably get one done for like $200 here. But that is actually the best indicator for heart disease because it tells you if your arteries are thickening. But a lot of people don't know that that cholesterol also surrounds your nerves. It's called the myelin sheath. It actually surrounds all your nerve endings. And so if you're not getting enough cholesterol, because your body produces like 3,000 milligrams or whatever cholesterol a day anyways on its own, if it's not producing that, you'll have nerve issues. You'll have those sort of inflammation and nerve issues.
Wow. So it's completely cascading.
Yeah. So as I said, when you start thinking that it's the body is so intertwined. I mean, and it's crazy to think when you really think about it, it has to be, right? I mean, your brain runs pretty much everything except for the heart. I mean, the heart has its own electrical system. So you have the brain and the heart, but they still work in conjunction with each other. There's still certain things, they all work together. You can't remove any one system and things still work properly. Now you can remove part of systems, like you can remove half of somebody's liver, you can remove one kidney, you can replace somebody's lung, but you can't remove the whole system and it still work. There's just no way. So you can't treat just one system. You need to kind of look at everything as a whole and see what's connected to what and why is this not working properly.
Beautiful, man. Got to get the instruction manual out for a human. If I were to ask your best friend, what is the one thing they would say you need to work on the most and why?
I overthink things a lot, and I have a bad habit of getting in my own head about things. Things that I'm unsure of, things I'm unfamiliar with. Sometimes I just hesitate maybe a little too much or really try to overthink it. That's probably the one thing I honestly do that irritates not only my friends, but also my wife.
Well, there's probably a positive on it too, that occasionally you see something coming that nobody else did. And you're like, nope, listen, man, I've been worried about this all day.
Yeah, there are those few instances where, like, especially like my wife has noticed every now and then, like I could be thinking about something or she's like, there's been those occasions where it's like, you know what, I didn't ask this question. I need to go back and ask this question because that's why I do it, is really to be able to make sure I'm covering all my bases and make sure I have a clear understanding of what is happening. But again, if I aspire to possibly being a captain or being a BC on the fire department, those decisions have to be made a lot quicker. So just kind of something I need to work on.
Yeah, something that I struggle with too, when it comes to overthinking things, it kind of leaves me to be locked in indecision,
Hmm.
inaction, and that can be an unhealthy thing. So yeah, I think I can relate to that, and I guess maybe don't don't let uh, don't let being locked in inaction prevent you from like living your life. That's
Right.
something that I was thinking about today.
Oh yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
What are you most curious about?
Um, I am very curious about ancient cultures, religions, heck, my own ancestry, and even customs surrounding death. Um, I actually got a chance. I've always thought it was odd that kind of in the Western civilized world, and it could just because there's so much that Christianity has been so prevalent in the Western civilized world. I found it odd that that's one of the religions that don't really have a custom around death. Like, yeah, we have funerals, and yeah, we have, you know, we have the ceremony, but you know, um, like Hispanics, though the culture has like the Day of the Dead.
Mhm.
A lot of Asian cultures have something similar where they go and they remember their ancestors. And I find it odd that there's a lot of other cultures that have that, and Western culture kind of doesn't. It's I find it really odd that now individually, I'm sure people do, but there's no. I don't feel like there's a concerted effort by us as a whole to pay our respects to the dead, to our ancestors that came before us, and part of that could just simply be because of the nature of families now, where they don't keep in close ties with each other, and so you end up losing a lot of your own family history. That could be the biggest reason, but I've always found that just very very odd, and I guess that's what so interests me so much about that.
Well, and it probably used to be different in a different way because now the laws don't allow you to bury your own family member. So,
True,
when
true.
something happens, and nowadays children don't die like they used to. You didn't have, two or three stillborn children in your house that you had to bury, or a child who
Hmm.
got sick or who got attacked by an animal. And when that happened, I mean, you buried your brother. A mother
Right.
buried their son. Like, this was a family thing. They were in the house. You had to clean them, change them. Like,
Hmm.
that's a whole different personal experience than somebody like
True.
yourself showing up, taking somebody away, and then the next time you
Hmm.
see them, they're in a box or, a container. And like, there's a connection, a deep connection that I'm like, I don't want to say but those rituals might have been just something that was very close. And when you
Hmm.
pulled that part out, like, it might have just vanished.
And I agree with that because you look at it. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie. Uh, ah, Anyways, but it's about um, kind of the Mexican culture where they have the ofrenda. Essentially, it's a shrine for the Day of the Dead, where they pay respects to their ancestors. Um, and I guess that's kind of what I'm talking about a little bit. Like, yeah, a lot of people do have pictures up, or I know a lot of people. Obviously, if they have a miscarriage or stillborn or anything else like that, they'll typically have um, some sort of something in the house to represent that, and that seems a little bit more commonplace versus grandma died and I'm going to make sure I have um, or like grandma and grandpa died, or all my grandparents died, and I'm going to have like kind of a makeshift shrine to all my ancestors and family members that has a memento or a picture of all those individuals, um, that I can dedicate one day a year to, even to make sure I appreciate and remember my ancestors. And I just noticed that in a lot of cultures, there is a specific day for that. Again, um, with down in Mexico, you're talking about the Day of the Dead, or even in Spain, same thing, Day of the Dead. I'm not sure uh, what the day is called with some of the Asian cultures, in Japan and China, but I know they both have one where there is a specific, usually a specific day that's religious in nature that they dedicate to to their dead. Like I said, it's just find it odd that in our Western world that there's really not that. Um,
Yeah, I was just going to say that we've secularized that day into Halloween, which is coming up pretty soon. I mean, people dress up and go collect candy. Well, like you were saying, like in Hispanic cultures, that's the Dia de los Muertos, and I think even in the Catholic Church, they have All Saints Day and All Souls Day, which may or may not be holy days of obligation. So I think that it's been the westernization has brought those traditions to quote unquote the new world through vehicles like the church and those holy days of obligation. But since society has drifted so far away from even westernized religion, we've lost all semblance of paying respects to your ancestors.
right, and again, I think that's probably why I have such a curiosity of again ancient cultures, religions, my own ancestry, and kind of the customs around death. Simply because half my ancestry is kind of lost to a degree, being biracial and not knowing where it picks up, whereas it ends. Like my dad's side of the family, I was able to kind of track to a degree to at least a certain area for the most part. Like I know it's Scotch Irish, pretty much is the lineage there. So I know the most ancient form of that would be Celt. Um, but as far as what tribe, what area of my mom's side and the ancestry there, I have no idea, and I would love to know more. And I would actually like to know more about those ancient religions and customs because I feel like there's something somewhat lost in our modern religion that takes a piece of it puts nature or the natural order of things in the background. And nature itself is such a powerful, powerful thing, and how we connect with nature, kind of like we were talking about earlier with, if you're depressed, go outside and go for a walk. Just walking outside barefoot, people have started to coin the term grounding. And it's just walking outside barefoot and what it does to the human body, having that connection to the earth. And I think some of that also went away with modern Western religion as well.
Absolutely. Hey, buildings have put us in cages.
Oh yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree about that. And that Disney movie is called Coco, by the way. I had to find it. It's a great movie. But um, but I think I feel like there's something lost there, especially when you can go into almost any modern religious text and you can break it down and find the discrepancies and the irrationality, and but you can still find history, and you can still find words of wisdom, and you can still find all these things. Well, it's like, you can find those things in here. So what else are we missing? Because clearly there were people who believed a certain way that coexisted with everything else around us. I mean, it's not crazy that almost every single old culture had some sort of harvest festival, had some sort of celebration around the solstice. Like every culture in its most ancient form had that. So it almost makes you think a little bit is like, is there a kind of a true religion thing kind of that existed to a degree? Like there's no real name for it, but it was this mass appreciation for the things around us. So it's a curiosity that I have.
What was the most embarrassing or humiliating experience of your life?
Ooh, honestly, I honestly can't recall. And that's probably because going back to the idea of being of overthinking things, that as I got older, I always try to go back and look at situations and things that I've been a part of and see what I could pull from them. Um, I know I've embarrassed myself. I'm sure I have. I mean, everybody does, but any specific?
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's interesting because it's one of those questions that I don't know, because I don't get embarrassed anymore. So, it's a
Right.
mindset. And so now I have to think back, and they're just postmarks that I've put in the ground. But I find it interesting because, when there's the occasional thing that I find that feeling creeping up in my head, I'm like, oh man, like, I gotta push that down. You're being stupid. And so, like, it's not a bad question not to have an answer for. I find with that.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm trying to really think about it. Like, you know what? I can think of one. Middle school, and this is just me being dumb. I argued about where Hawaii was on the map, and I never put it together. Again, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, especially when I was a kid. So what threw me off was when I looked at a map. They usually put Hawaii like off to a certain area on the map, but they never really explicitly like put, or I never really noticed that it was like in the Pacific Ocean. Um, and I thought it was where all the other islands were, which was in the Atlantic. And so I remember kind of going back and forth about it, and I stuck to my guns on it, and I was definitely proven wrong. Um, and I mean, that was probably I choked it down. I obviously didn't know, but I mean, that's probably the most embarrassing, humiliating things about it. I mean, honestly, what made it so bad is because I actually called the girl an idiot too when I was clearly the idiot. So that's what made it even absolutely worse.
No, it's better. You're living in your own little world, and that's exactly what they're thinking. Like, what?
Yeah, like this dude is an absolute idiot. And again, it was like looking back on it, it's like one, I never made that mistake again, and two, it was just a matter of it was kind of a not paying attention thing. I had never really learned my geography, and we're talking seventh grade, which is sad. But at that point, I'd really never learned my geography. It wasn't until after that, go figure. And so, it was what it was at the time. And man, I'm surprised I even remember that now. But yeah,
you might have forgot that, but you know what? You'll never forget. You'll never forget where Hawaii is.
I won't. I absolutely won't.
What is your? Go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to say that I love this question because it gets everybody to admit that. I think for the most part that we've done something stupid, and I think that kind of knocks the ego down a notch, and it reminds us that everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. We're all humans, and we're all playing more or less on the same level.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree with that.
Yeah. What I always run through my head when I start feeling like embarrassment, it's like what happened? Like you shit your pants in public, right? Whatever it's going to be. It's like, well, that can happen to anybody. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong meal. So it's like, why would you be embarrassed? When I see other people doing stuff like that, I laugh my ass off because they're embarrassed. Not because I think it's funny, because I'm like, there's no reason to be embarrassed and you're embarrassed. Yeah. And that to me is the funny part, which is like, it's still the same result. You still think I'm being a dick, but like, I get it. I don't take it seriously.
No, I was saying, if it hasn't happened yet, it's going to. I mean, there's always...
That's right.
There's always something.
What is your greatest fear and how did you overcome it?
I have not overcome my greatest fear because my greatest fear is not being good enough. And there's really no good way to overcome that. But what I have learned to do with it is use it as a motivator. And I've had to do that consistently. And I always got to come back. I mean, even at 34, I still got to come back to it and be like, you know what? Don't focus on what I don't know. Focus on what I know. And that's always something I have to keep in the back of my head. Cause again, going back to sometimes I overthink things and that kind of goes back to that is like, that's how I get past that.
What quality do you most admire in a man and why?
Probably honestly the same one that most women do too. I mean, confidence, intelligence, action, willingness to teach. Um, the list kind of goes on. Our society needs good, strong men, and they need them in leadership roles. And what we found is that there's a lot of good men who have just taken the side of I just want to be left alone, and we need to start stepping up and getting past that, and actually start doing more things.
Nice.
Our wife just grabbed the dog.
Oh no, that's all good. No, yeah, it's that's great. Yeah, it's kind of weird. There's a weird demasculation of men going on right now that kind of just I don't quite understand. I mean, I guess I understand where it's coming from. It's coming from, generally a good place, but yeah, it seems to kind of not run congruent with those things that I admire,
Right.
in a person. And I don't know. It's kind of like, well, the things that I want in a father kind of overlap with some of those things, Protect your children no matter what. Well, what's no matter what? Well, I don't have a line in the sand on that. Protect your children,
Well, and that's one of those things where it's very easy to be like, I will do anything for my family, right? It's very easy to say, I will do anything to protect my family. Now, in some cases, we got to look at it and say, okay, how far are you willing to protect your family and from what? Are you willing to protect them if they murder somebody? I mean, there's those little start splitting hair sorts of things that you can start getting into. And I understand. I understand the idea of toxic masculinity. I get where that comes from because there are people out there who are very negative who want to be this. What's the term? I forget who says it, but like the tyrant king. It's they want to be the top. They want to be this person, but they're going about it completely negative, and that sheds and there's people who they attract to them doing that. But again, they're all the kind of same type of person, and those are things we don't need. Now, do we need hardened men who can make hard decisions? Absolutely, because not all decisions should be easy. I mean, that's part of our humanity. But we still need good, strong men who can make decisions, who have a willingness to act and teach and do it with confidence, even when they are not necessarily confident in themselves about it. They can still grit their teeth and just push forward and get it done because they can at least see the end goal or the end game to getting it done and knowing it's for the better. So I mean, everything that would be encompassed in that. There's always going to be those sides to an individual. I forget his name now from the book. I know I let Bill borrow it, but the king, the magician, the warrior, and the lover. The four archetypes of man, and it's very, very true. And there are negative archetypes that exist, but all of us want to be. And I'm kind of tired of hearing the phrase king anymore because of how it's being used, but the connotation of it is like you're the king of your castle, you're the man of the house, um but at the same time you need to be wise, you need to be intelligent, like the magician. You need to be that warrior that can protect and provide. And when I say protect and provide, I'm not talking about, well, you have to be the breadwinner, because there's plenty of strong men who are stay-at-home dads, and that's how they protect and they provide for their family. There's plenty of single dads who protect and provide for their family. So I'm not saying it has to fit into a specific mold, but there is a version of protecting and providing. And then, the lover. There is a part of man that is very much capable of love and compassion. And I think in our society today, that portion of man is almost two sides. Like you either have a person who has none or has a negative version of it, or the person has way too much and they're unbalanced in the other three aspects of what you would consider would make the four archetypes of man. So there's definitely a balancing act, and I think there needs to be some comfort, or there needs to be a learned comfort in each one of those roles, and that's even something I've had to learn.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that book up, Eric, because it's something I really struggled with not mentioning when I answered these questions. So, just for the listeners out there, it's called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. It's by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette, like the razor. So, just to put that out there, it's a great book. I recommend it to anybody. Oh, and the other thing, going back to you touched on confidence there for a moment, to kind of go back to the previous question of fear of not being good enough, I guess, for the way to put it. There's actually a term for that, and it's called the imposter syndrome. And that's when we're afraid that we're not cut out for the roles that we take, and that will be found out. So that is something that, I mean, it helps to have a label for things sometimes. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Hey, until the word exists, there's no way to conceptualize exactly what it is. And then for me to tell you and share it, I mean, we got to kind of have an agreed upon definition. So yeah, those defining terms can really, help you, peel the onion off life.
Oh yeah. And again, like I said, I've recognized that about myself, and that's why I've been able to use it as more of a motivator. And in most aspects. Now, does it creep upon me every now and then? Absolutely, because when things are new and foreign, there's always that retraction, a little bit of fear, because it is foreign. Like, not everybody gets excited about new experiences, especially when a new experience could require someone's life to depend on it, or even your own life to depend on it. And so there comes a lot of anxiety with that. Or even when you're unsure of, I mean, even in the sense of like, when you're in a relationship, there have been men who struggled, or even women who have struggled with the idea is, am I good enough for the person that I've chosen to spend my time in my life with? And that's definitely a struggle. And the one thing that I found with that is constant communication, and being on this, trying to be on the same page through communicating, not trying to read each other's mind.
Who were and or are your role models, and why?
I can't honestly say there's a singular one. And the reason for that is I try to pull aspects from a lot of different people that I admire. Whether it's a minister or somebody I've randomly met on a job, or it's my brother, it's my dad. There's something to be said to try and learn something positive from everybody. Being able to always improve upon yourself by taking little pieces of individuals. Now, again, you and that individual may have a falling out or anything else, but there's probably something a little positive you can remember about them, whether it was their determination to do something that they're really passionate about, or something like that. But I can't say I have just a single.
No, I love your angle on that, because it's the other. It's really the same thing that I talked about here before. It's even a broken clock is right twice a day. But what you're saying is everybody's got valuable information, and I always will look at it that way. I'll never discount people because of one thing completely. I'll look at everything in totality, and then select from that information, because. When you start throwing things out the window, you miss out on so many beautiful things. I mean, the baby goes out with the bathwater.
Right. And I think it kind of almost going back to like, religious literature. There are people, if you study anything long enough, any writing long enough, you will find that there is some sort of message you can pull from it. And whether it's Harry Potter, whether it's Christopher Pike's The Last Vampire, there's something you can probably find about a character or within the writing itself that you can be like, man, that's really good. And I don't remember the quote right now, but I distinctly remember reading what was it? It was a Star Wars book. I think it was part of the Darth Bane trilogy, and there was a specific line in there, and it was just so good. And I'm drawing a blank on it now, but it was so compelling when I read it that I was just like, man, that's so true. Like that's just so about life. Like and you can find it in anything.
Well, and that's crazy. I mean, words in literature, the thoughts that we, I mean, you're taking something from your mind, putting it on paper, and then when you read it, there's something about that idea because it's contagious. It gets stuck in your head. It changes the way you think. It might change your behavior. It changes your worldview. That's what I love, and especially it's like we're having this conversation with you, just a firefighter, because you find those things deeply everywhere that you look. And I mean, we are information gathering machines. I mean, everybody's got a story to tell. Like, talk to somebody long enough, sit down at a bar with somebody, and if you want, you're going to hear some crazy stuff. Everybody's got it. What institution of society or structural aspect of modern life would you change given the chance?
Probably the public school system. I've noticed, and a lot of people have noticed, it's not just me, but I had to jump on the bandwagon of noticing that there's a huge disservice in our public school system. And I thrived my senior year by getting involved in the building trades and learning to work with my hands and to be able to build and things like that. And I understand pushing for college for better opportunities and everything. But, the trade industry is hurting, it's not very often that you hear a lot of kids being told to look into civil service as far as police officers or firefighters. Both of those industries are hurting across the board. You have kids who are coming out and they don't know how to balance a checkbook or at least understand how to make money work for them or the importance of saving and why. Not just saving so you can buy certain things, but how to set yourself up. The importance of understanding why you need life insurance and how to start creating generational wealth. Those things aren't being taught. And at least they're not being taught to the quote unquote regular students. Now, do some of your honor students, your AP students probably get some of that information? Absolutely, because they're deemed the ones that are able to handle that information. They're the ones that understand and comprehend it. But everybody needs to know that information: how to sew, how to cook, how to handle money, all those basic things to live. But then outside of that, understand that you don't just need to go to college for an education. Heck, the amount of schooling you will do as a carpenter, a union trade carpenter, will be the equivalent of probably a bachelor's degree when it's all said and done.
Or anything. Like, I think to a story I heard on the Rogan Experience, and it was one of his hunter friends who's an expert hunter, saying, yeah, I go out with these millionaire businessmen, but when they're in this world, like, I'm the expert. If shit goes sideways and there's no society, some sort of cataclysm, guess what? That guy, that sewing skill, that hunting skill, that real world skill that right now makes you nothing, that's being a human. The ability to connect and to find value and work with other people, these things that we're losing. That's what scares me when things go backwards, is that the community's not there. So instead of, teaming together to rise above the environment that we're in, like, it's crabs in a bucket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's real world usable experience needs to be taught. I mean, I'm not saying that starting next year in public school they need to teach you how to field dress a deer, but there are some areas
I think that would be good.
I will categorically say I learned more useful information from my years in Boy Scouts than I did in school, because most of the value information that I learned in my schooling times was self-educated or learning the BS and then having to go, well, now I have to learn more to overcome this.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
Dude, that's all that the quote unquote traditional education system did for me. I have a degree in philosophy, so I like to say I have a degree in bullshit because
mhm.
that was, how that was required to get to the degree was, here's a point in an argument, pick a side, and make it, present your case, and yeah, I mean that doesn't. Sure, it's fun or whatever, but as far as practicality, like something like learning to cook, I mean that's way more important, and it's not taught in
Well,
schools
especially
anymore.
now going back to the health issue. I mean, it starts there. You know,
Yeah.
we are a system, and one of the core things in our system is the biology of other beings, bacteria and things that are beneficial that we need, that if you strip them from the system, we die. So when you're
Mhm.
buying stuff at a store, you're buying preservatives, things that are meant to keep those things from growing. So at the very least, there's this disconnect where, I mean, if you can't prepare foods that are wholesome and healthy, meaning they don't rot quickly, which is what healthy stuff does for the most part, then I mean it's a tough situation to get people to turn it around. I mean, it's one of those like, yeah, home ec should be required. Basic nutrition not built on the pyramid but on science should be required. And it's not. It's sad.
Yeah. Well, and nutrition built on good science, because we all know what bad science
Yeah.
gets us, like backed by industry. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, especially when you consider that. I don't know if you ever heard of the farm. It's out east. It's called Polyface Farms, and the guy who runs that, I think his name is Joe Salatin. You can find podcasts with him, and he talks about regenerative agriculture and how the way he does his ranching is so great that one it's carbon negative. It actually sequesters more carbon than the trees on his land that he has his cattle grazing. And then also that he can graze up to 400% more cattle than what he originally started with, because of how he's rebuilt the ecosystem into its natural, more of its natural state.
So it's just rebuilding itself faster and quicker because it's got the balance of nutrients and everything it needs instead of
Yeah.
stripping it down and then you just get what's here. Damn.
Well,
I
and
didn't think
again,
about that
because
aspect.
yeah, and again, we're going back to talking about grounding by walking around barefoot and stuff like that. You got to consider this guy. He even understands the science behind it, about how much bacteria there is in the ground that needs to feed on cow manure or chicken feces or whatever. And it's like there's bacteria that needs that in the ground, that uses it as a fuel source, and that's how it's all connected. We're walking around in nature, and they're a part of it, we're a part of it, and all that that coexistence is, there's something to be said. I know for a fact that when I was really upset with my job working in the factory for a while, one of the things that I did was I was doing the garden in the back of our house, and I had a tiller, and I was just tilling up the ground, and I was out there in the hot sun most of the day, and I just felt at ease doing it. Like, I just felt calm doing it. Like, and I wasn't even really thinking about it. Like, it was a lot of work, but honestly, I felt great. Like, just interacting with nature. And I was telling somebody today, like, my wife and I, we like to do Spartan races, and the one thing I love, we're not the fastest people, and so it takes us 4 to 6 hours to do a 14 mile or 12 mile obstacle course. And I love it though. Like, I don't want to do that course fast, because that's 6 hours without my cell phone, me in nature trying to accomplish a task. And that sort of tech detox is amazing. Just being out there, and knowing that you have a goal that you're trying to achieve in nature, it's great.
Yeah, coming from somebody that sits in front of the computer for not only their day job but for a hobby, like it's very important to get outside and be in nature. I actually planted a garden this year with my girlfriend, and the whole process throughout the year, watching things grow, really does reconnect you with nature. And I think that's a, a source that creates a lot of tension and anxiety in society, is being disconnected from nature. And it just seems like every institution that we come across tries to pull us further and further away from that. So being able to reconnect to that, yeah,
Well,
I can see.
you're forced in a system. You got to go to a job. You got to make money to go buy that food to go do this. But I mean, in a system where you weren't locked in, I mean, the earth does provide. You know, you can
Absolutely.
grow those plants. You can coax them into helping. You can provide the environment where you both coexist. And it's a beautiful, I mean, everything comes in a plastic package nowadays. So, you know,
Yeah.
we don't see, yeah, man, it's really easy to grow tomatoes. Give them plenty of water, plenty of sun, and keep the birds off of them. You'll be fine. And, you know, it's like like I had a dog that planted her own tomatoes. You know, we would give her cherry tomatoes. She loved them. And she started growing her own tomatoes by accident underneath a leaky faucet. And I was like, great, this is nature. She's literally, my dog can have its own garden.
Yeah, it's something to be said for it for sure, especially if you can get it back in its own ecosystem. I've been explaining to people here lately that, you know, every time that man or humans think they're smarter than nature, they've kind of destroyed things, and it's not been good. So, you know, monocropping and overgrazing and those sorts of things, it's you got to go back and you got to look how it all fits together and how we can all fit that together and everything else. It's crazy.
Word.
What was the most courageous thing you have ever done in your life or seen?
Um, so I've been told that it's very courageous that I actually donated a kidney to my sister.
Wow.
Um, that's usually the response I get.
Well, no, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you made the reference earlier. So, I mean, it kind of ties that importance back to me more now.
It's I again I love my family, and my sister she has lupus and her kidneys got wrecked after her second kid. And yeah, I've always loved my sister. And so it was no brainer to me that I wanted to help my sister as much as possible. This was back in 2006. Was when we went through the donation process and everything. Um, and again, I don't mention it. For whatever reason I've been mentioning it more often lately, but initially I don't really mention it because I don't really think about it until it comes up about certain like health stuff or things like that, or when I'm people will ask me like, hey, how's doing carnivore, how does that do with your kidneys? And I'm like, well, heck, I'm doing carnivore successfully and I only have one. So it's that's one of those things that again, I can understand why people say it's courageous, and honestly, I did it just because I love my family.
That's beautiful, man. What does it mean to be a man in today's world?
Um, Man, that is so multifaceted. The being able being able to provide. Sorry, my dog's over
No,
there.
I get it. He's like, what are you doing, man? I'm over here.
Give me 1 second.
Stop
all right?
talking to that screen, man. Give me a sausage.
Um, as far as what does it mean to be a man in today's world? Um, Traditionally speaking, I mean, it's being able to provide, but being able to provide for yourself is the first thing. You need to be able to take care of yourself first before you can help or do anything for anybody else. There's no sense in wrecking yourself into the ground and purely and sacrificing so much of yourself that it's for nothing. Um, and for your family, that's kind of the beginning of it. But being a good person, being a capable leader, I mean, those are kind of the more simplistic things. Um, because not everybody's called to lead um, a grand cause or anything else like that, but still leading your family down a good path, leading your children down a good path, or whatever you choose to do as far as your vocation or your passions. Um, and also having that determination to walk through hell if necessary to get it done. again, in a more in a positive manner, being productive, being productive to society in a good way. Uh, and again, it's so multifaceted. I mean, if you're a single man in this world, then just not being a jerk, just you know, just being an overall good person, willing to help, and keeping keeping them straight and narrow. I mean, if you have a family, being able to provide, whether that's financially or emotionally, or if it's in a support role. I mean, all those things just add into being a single person.
Yeah, I was just going to say that this kind of ties back into the you talked about providing, that ties back into the king archetype,
Mhm.
that the idea of producing more than you consume, so you're able to support others.
Right. And I mean, we can all we can go into that mindset um, that if you wanted to be that individual who just gives freely of everything you have, whether it's for a religious reason or whatever. I mean, I feel like that's all fine and well if that's what you're called to do, but uh, there's so much more you can do if you are also sustained at the same time. You can do so much more, and instead of just why cut your life short or sell yourself short when if at the same time you're helping while providing for yourself. And I'm not saying being gluttonous while providing for yourself, but just being able to provide for yourself and all your necessities, and then also providing for whomever and wherever your passions take you, then that's even better, in my opinion. um I mean, that's just the way I look at it.
Eric, guess what?
What is up?
That is the end of the 13 major questions, or whatever we're calling them now.
Awesome.
Still haven't quite worked out how we're going to work the bonus section in. So I guess for now we're still calling it the bonus section.
Okay.
But the flip side of that question,
We can call it the community section.
that's a good idea.
Section.
I like that. Feel free to send in your suggestions. I have a few in the bank already, and yeah, these are easy to cycle out. So, and that includes you. If there's any questions that you, Eric, think that after thinking about it, that you go, this would be really good for the show, send it on over. I'm willing to keep this thing growing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So the flip side to the last question is this: what quality do you most admire in a woman?
Pretty much almost all the same ones I admire in a man. Um, so confidence, ambition, and speaking directly about about women, being comfortable in the bedroom. I mean, that's a personal one, but um, there's something to be said by being comfortable in the most in the most intimate times. Um, and there's a phrase that my wife uses, and I honestly can't remember it. But I found out I found out very early on. I was always looking for a wife.
I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. No what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. No what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. No what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. No what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. No what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. No what?
Why is one man rich and another man poor? Why we ain't satisfied? Why we gotta have more? Why your suicide rates on the rest so high? Why I tell you the truth, but you say don't lie? Why is being a good father at an all-time low? Why is it acceptable? Yo, why? I don't know. Why she blame him and he blame her? It's useless. Ask yourself this question. Why you making excuses? Why do parents gotta bury their kids? Why we text and drive, not caring how scary it is? Why it's so hard to forgive and leave the past behind? And if you did, then that's divine. Why don't you help your brother when you see him fall? Why do we act like God don't see it all? Why do we call them black, them white, them Asians and use labels? Now that's racism.
Har jag wonder how I know? Har jag wonder how I know? Yo, why? Har jag wonder how I know? Har jag wonder how I know? Yo, why? Har jag wonder how I know? Har jag wonder how I know? Yo, why? Har jag wonder how I know? Har jag wonder how I know? Yo,
why is there innocent people locked up for life, while some people can't say nothing nice? Why do we always gotta question what all of it means? And why won't you follow your dreams? Tell me why. The night when you took my dad, why'd you let me see my grandpa cry? And tell me why. And why do you choose to hide, even though you was born to fly? And tell me why. And why don't we turn from all the hate? And why don't we learn from all mistakes? Why do I keep on wrecking these fat beats? And teachers don't make more than professional athletes? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why?
Har jag wonder how I know? Har jag wonder how I know? Yo, why? Har jag wonder how I know? Har jag wonder how I know? Yo, why? Har jag wonder how I know? Har jag wonder how I know? Yo, why? Har jag wonder how I know? Har jag wonder how I know? Yo, why?
This should be considered entertainment and not therapy. We hope you benefit from our resources available at 13questionspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.